Every piece of your life has likely crossed an ocean in a steel box. Yet nearly every shipping container in the world comes from just 3 companies, all in China. 25 million containers move over 90% of global trade, but their origins tell a story of industrial power, market collapse, and an economic calculation that locked out the rest of the world. How did something so universal become so exclusive? And what does that reveal about who really controls globalization? In 1956, a converted oil tanker called the Ideal X left Newark, New Jersey, loaded with 58 metal boxes. Its owner, Malcolm McLean, was a trucking magnate frustrated by the slow, expensive chaos of break bulk shipping. The voyage proved a point the industry could not ignore. Loading cargo in standardized containers cut handling costs by more than 90%, and it slashed port times from days to hours. The world had just seen the birth of containerization, and with it, the rules of global trade would never be the same. But the real secret to the container's spread was not just the steel box itself. It was a decision made by engineer Keith Tantlinger, who designed the twist-lock corner fitting, the device that lets containers stack securely and move seamlessly between ships, trains, and trucks. Instead of locking up the idea with patents, McLean and Tantlinger released the design to the world royalty-free. Suddenly, anyone could build a compatible container. There were no intellectual property tolls, no licensing fees, and no company with exclusive rights. The only limit was how many you could produce and how cheaply you could do it. This choice created an open standard that changed everything. Production became a race for scale. Factories sprang up wherever trade flourished. In the 1960s, Japan took the lead, turning out thousands of boxes as its export economy boomed. By the 1970s and the 1980s, South Korea's shipyards and steel mills fueled another surge, pushing costs down even further. Each decade, the center of container manufacturing shifted, chasing cheaper labor and larger industrial clusters. The design never changed, but the map of who built the world's boxes kept moving east. By the 1990s, the relay reached China. There, the sheer size of the workforce, the hunger for exports, and the growing steel industry created the perfect storm. For every country that had come before, the open standard meant opportunity. But as volumes grew, it also meant that only the biggest, fastest, and cheapest could survive the race. China became the epicenter of production. A shipping container is nearly 4 tons of steel, most of it a specialized alloy called Core 10, built to survive salt water and decades of hard knocks. Steel alone makes up about 60% of the cost to produce each box. In the modern era, China produces more than 1 billion tons of crude steel every year, outpacing every other country combined. Its mills run day and night near the world's busiest ports, feeding container factories with a steady, low-cost supply. That advantage isn't just about price per ton, it is about geography. Most manufactured goods, the electronics, toys, furniture, and shoes that fill these boxes, begin their journey in Asia. The closer a factory is to the steel and the cargo, the less it spends on moving raw materials and finished containers. But the real math kicks in after the container is built. Once a box carries its load to Europe or North America, there is a problem. Far more goods move out of Asia than back in. For every container full of exports, many return empty. The cost to send a single empty box from Rotterdam or Los Angeles back to Shanghai can run from $3,000 to $6,000, depending on fuel, tariffs, and port fees. Every empty journey eats into profits. For a factory outside Asia, this becomes a trap. Build a container in Europe or in the USA, and you face not only higher steel costs and tariffs, but also the penalty of repositioning, paying to ship empty boxes back to where the next export is waiting. Even if a plant manages to match China's production price, these logistics erase the margin. In a market where 41% of container trips are empty, the numbers almost always favor building near the biggest export hubs. Steel decides where the box is made, and the flow of global trade locks that decision in place. CIMC stands at the heart of this system, a company whose name appears on nearly half the world's shipping containers. Founded in Shenzhen in 1980, CIMC grew from a small repair shop into an industrial giant, now pulling in over $20 billion in annual revenue. During peak years, its factories have turned out more than 2 million containers, each stamped with a serial number and a plate that signals its origin. The scale is staggering. CIMC runs 11 container plants, some so automated they barely need lights. In these so-called lights-out facilities, robotic arms weld, paint, and assemble steel panels around the clock, guided by software that tracks every step. The company does not just build boxes. It also churns out airport boarding bridges, modular buildings, and smart containers equipped with sensors for real-time tracking. But size alone does not explain why CIMC survived when so many others vanished. Container manufacturing is a brutal business. Prices swing wildly with global demand. In the crash of 2009, orders evaporated almost overnight. Western companies, forced to answer to shareholders every quarter, laid off workers and shuttered plants. CIMC, by contrast, tapped lines of credit from state-owned banks and kept its assembly lines ready, even as profits plunged. When the world economy rebounded, CIMC was first out of the gate, able to ramp up production while rivals scrambled to rebuild. The payoff came during the pandemic surge of 2020 and 2021, when shipping rates soared and container prices tripled in some markets. CIMC's output surged by the millions, capturing business that competitors simply could not match. This ability to weather downturns and invest in the future is more than luck. It is a structural advantage built on scale, automation, and access to patient capital. While others shrink in the lean years, CIMC expands its moat, ready to flood the market when opportunity returns. The company's reach now extends through every link of the supply chain, from steel mill to port to shipyard. But even for a giant, survival sometimes depends on forces beyond its control, like the rules that decide who gets to play the game at all. In 2017, a government regulation swept through China's container industry. The new rule banned traditional solvent-based paints, forcing every factory to switch to water-based coatings. On paper, it was an environmental measure, cutting toxic emissions and improving air quality. For manufacturers, though, it was a financial earthquake. Retrofitting a single production line meant installing massive humidity control systems and new drying tunnels. For the largest plants, the cost ran into the millions. For small and mid-sized factories, it was often impossible to justify. Within a year, dozens of yards shut their gates for good. The survivors, CIMC, Dongfang, CXIC, absorbed the contracts and kept their lines moving, emerging with even more control than before. The scoreboard told the story. As smaller players vanished, the Big Three's share of global output soared past 85%. By 2018, China built nearly every dry container and all refrigerated units sold worldwide. The environmental regulation didn't just clean the air, it cleared the field. Elsewhere would be challengers watched and recalculated. In Vietnam, new plants opened with hopes of breaking in. But even at full tilt, a Vietnamese factory might produce 30,000 units a year. That's a fraction of a single Chinese giant's monthly output. India's container projects faced the same math. Without a local steel industry on China's scale, every sheet of metal had to be shipped in at a premium. Tariffs, transport costs, and the need to send empty boxes back to Asia devoured any price advantage. The numbers are stark. A new entrant outside China might hope for 10,000 to 50,000 containers a year. CIMC alone can build 2 million. The gap isn't closing. Regulation, geography, and scale have locked the market in place. Yet the question lingers, if every box is made in one place, what happens when the world needs a new kind of container or a new kind of supplier? Right now, more than 90% of global trade depends on boxes made by just 3 firms in one country. As supply chains grow more fragile, that concentration shapes what the world can move and what it cannot. Control the box, and you control the flow of everything inside it.